Welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here today because, well, we're going to look at something truly fascinating. Hidden inside every major life breakdown, every devastating setback, and every profound human transition is a 3,000-year-old secret. And once you understand the architecture of this ancient secret, I promise you, you're never going to look at a difficult season the exact same way again. You know, have you ever hit absolute zero? We've all been there, or let's be honest, we will be at some point. Maybe it's a business you poured your absolute heart and soul into that just suddenly collapsed. Maybe a long-term relationship unexpectedly ended. Or maybe you simply woke up one day and realized the life you built feels a whole lot more like a cage than a home. It's incredibly painful, right? You feel totally stuck, totally isolated, and everyone just pats you on the back and tells you to wait it out. But here's the thing, waiting and actively forging are two completely different things. What you're experiencing right now isn't just random pain, it's a deeply structural process. All right, let's dive into Section 1, the secret of the Mem, which is essentially this ancient operating system. To really understand this operating system, we look to the ancient Hebrew letter Mem. In these ancient texts, Mem is a visual picture of water, and it perfectly corresponds to the number 40. But why water? Well, because water does two things simultaneously. It absolutely destroys the old world, and it gives life to the new one. And this isn't just beautiful poetry. This is a highly functional architectural framework for rebuilding a life. When you're in a deep transition, the old structures are being washed away specifically so new ones can be built. And this brilliantly illustrates a reality that almost nobody talks about. The letter Mem actually has two entirely different forms. Over on the left, we have the open Mem. It looks kind of like water flowing freely, like a river. When you're in an open season, you see visible progress. Things are hard, sure, but they're moving. Now on the right, we have the closed Mem. It looks like a perfectly sealed box, an airtight container with absolutely no visible exit. Most people going through a profoundly hard season are trapped right there, inside the closed Mem. It feels like the silence is just deafening. But remember, both of these are Mem. Both of these represent the exact same force of creation, just operating differently. Moving right along to Section 2, decoding the number 40, or as we call it, the 40-day anomaly. Understanding the numerical value of Mem, which as we said is 40, requires a massive paradigm shift. This specific number shows up over 130 times in ancient texts. People see 40 days of rain or 40 years wandering around in a desert, and they instantly assume it means punishment. They completely misread the text. Actually, scratch that. If we look closely at the historical and narrative patterns, we see the exact opposite. It's not about punishment at all. It's entirely about preparation. So the crucial point is this. 40 isn't what is taken away. It is what is being made. It's a designated, highly intentional period of forging. When you're in a 40 season, the universe isn't just stripping things from you maliciously. It's clearing the ground so that a stronger, much more resilient version of you can be manufactured. Let's look at some proof in Section 3, Blueprints of the Forge, focusing on some historical key studies. To see how this forge actually operates in practice, let's impartially look at 3 historical blueprints. We'll start with the Moses blueprint. His life is perfectly segmented into 3 40-year blocks. For his first 40 years, he's the Prince of Egypt. He's got immense status, massive resources, but no real identity. Then, for the middle 40 years, he becomes a fugitive shepherd out in the desert. Complete, anonymous silence. He literally went from having everything to absolute zero. But it was in that middle 40 years of isolated silence that his core identity was actually rebuilt. By the time he had 80, he stepped into his final 40 years as a national deliverer. That middle period, it wasn't wasted time at all. It was the forge that built a person capable of holding immense weight and leadership under pressure. Next up, we have the Elijah secret. According to the texts, Elijah was totally burned out, exhausted, and just ready to quit. He's told to walk to a specific mountain. Now, geographically speaking, a direct route should have taken him about 2 weeks, but he took 40 days. The extra time wasn't some kind of inefficiency or navigational mistake. The forge happens in the walking itself. If your own life transition is currently taking twice as long as you planned, take a breath. You are not behind schedule. You are actively being stripped of your old identity in the silence, and that process simply cannot be rushed. Finally, the wilderness narrative of Jesus serves as the absolute, ultimate proof of this principle. Immediately after his public baptism, which was a moment of ultimate validation, he didn't launch a massive public ministry. Instead, he was immediately led into the wilderness for 40 days of intense private testing. The principle here is foundational. Private testing always precedes public success. You don't get the stage until you've survived the silence. The stage comes after the silence, never before. Bringing these three historical blueprints together, a very clear pattern emerges. Moses teaches us about identity and silence, showing us that the wilderness is actually a womb, not a prison. Elijah teaches us about pacing and walking, proving you absolutely cannot microwave what needs to be forged. And Jesus teaches us about testing and preparation, reinforcing that private testing is the prerequisite for public success. A hard season isn't some senseless delay. It's a highly active, structured rebuilding phase. Okay, let's dive into this next part. Section 4. Inside the closed MAM, the mechanics of metallurgy. This is where it gets incredibly practical. Think about forging the strongest possible steel. It often requires temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to radically alter the actual crystalline structure of the metal, and metallurgists follow a very precise sequence to do it. First, initial heat is applied. Second, immense pressure builds. Now, step 3 is absolutely critical. This must happen in a completely sealed environment that prevents escape. Why? Because of step 4, molecular restructuring. If you applied that kind of heat and pressure out in the open air, the metal would simply oxidize or shatter completely. You wouldn't get the same result. The sealed silence and the pressure are absolute structural necessities to change the metal at its core. I want you to shift your perspective right now. The pain you feel isn't destruction, it's reformation. If you find yourself right now in the closed MEM, you're going to recognize these characteristics. First, there is zero visible progress or outside confirmation. Second, you experience a sealed, highly pressurized silence. But third, please remember that these are intensive, highly efficient forge conditions. The silence of your circumstances isn't an absence of progress. It's the sound of deep, structural reformation. And fourth, look closely at the shape of the MEM letter we saw earlier. It has a defined, finite boundary. It has a bottom. The ancient architecture dictates that an exit already exists. You just can't see it from the inside of the box. Let's move to our final section and see how this all builds together. Section 5, ending at the table, the true destination. Notice the stark contrast between these two phases. The beginning of the 40-period narrative is always characterized by the wilderness, by deep isolation, and by severe testing. But if we impartially look at the final historical appearance of the number 40 in these texts, it is totally different. It's characterized by the table, by community, and by presence. The goal of the forge is never to leave you alone in the dark. The ultimate goal is wholeness. And really, the ultimate truth of the forge is exactly this. It doesn't end in isolation. It ends in community, wholeness, and presence. If you're in the fire right now, please hear me on this. Stop trying to frantically escape the forge. Let the Menarome do its work. Let the old, fragile version of yourself wash away, because the new, unbreakable version is already forming in the heat. So I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder. If your current wilderness isn't just a random delay or some kind of punishment, if it's actually a high-performance training ground designed to completely rebuild you, what is being built in you right now that you couldn't have possibly received any other way? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.